Council Advisory Board to order for our workshop. We have 4 budgets to go over tonight: economic development, police department, grounds clerk, and recreation. First up is the economic development.
Here it is.
Don't confuse us, all right? That's it.
I didn't want to touch it till it's set.
What's the format here? I just said it, I'm just
Nope.
over there.
You have to stand by the microphone.
So they can see you and hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay, I just did the outline for you, and I just broke all of my lines down so that you can see what the monies are. The payroll line is broken down. It's a 53 weeks with the 1.75%. The thing about my payroll line, just so that everybody understands, is that we have a budget that we put in through the IRP, which is one of our loan funds, which is one of our loan accounts, and so $6,850 is budgeted from that account for the services for that program. That's the only one that we do that with. They used to do it with the FAME grant, but they don't do that any longer, so that's the one they do it with. So that's why it shows a little bit different on mine, and sometimes that confuses people. But I kind of put it like that so you'd understand what that was.
What was that value?
$68.50, it's right on that sheet. I did the whole breakdown so you could see how it came to the numbers on the sheet that you have from Steve. I had 3 lines. Mine was one of the budgets last year that had some issues where some of my lines got zeroed out by mistake, and so I didn't have any money in the budget for mileage, professional development, or the membership dues and meetings, which is part of, you'll see the increase because it was 0 last time and the money wasn't there, so that money is being put back in. The mileage amount is $750. The professional development, that includes the Maine Downtown Institute trainings, the leadership program, any grant writing and recertifications that take place. That all falls under that category. I just put those in there for an example, so you'll see what gets charged to that. The membership dues and meetings is $17.25, and I have that broken down by dollar amounts right under it. The chamber is $225. EDCM is the Economic Development Council of Maine, which is $100. The Maine Development Foundation is $300. MCDA is the Maine Community Development Association for $100, and our Maine Downtown Network program is $1,000. So that equals the $17.25. The meals and lodging is $250. Advertising and marketing is $1,500, and that includes marketing materials that we've been discussing creating, and we're looking at doing a map, some pamphlets, a doing business in Lisbon pamphlet as well, and also some of the legal notices and advertising also fall under that line. The telephone is includes the telephone and the cell phone. That's $1,400 plus the phone here that I have. Postage and delivery we have at $1,500, and that includes the bulk billing permits, which is $370. There's 2 different permits that we purchase for the whole town, and it comes out of my budget, but it's available for everybody to use. We are looking at a town-wide mailing. We talked about doing a year in review, and that will be about $810 if we do that. We are trying to get email, but one of the things that I'm finding is, and I'm hearing from a lot of folks, especially some of the senior citizens, is a lot of folks don't have email, so they're not getting a lot of the correspondence. So we were trying to come up with a way that we would be able to get the information to them as well, even if they don't have an email address. And then we do that would also include 4 business mailings. We have 324 businesses currently on our list, so that would be $304. Office supplies at $450, and committee and events is $1,000. It's listed as something different on your sheet, the 5380, and that was just how it was set up last year. I don't quite understand why it was done that way. It's under 5380. So they have it under supplies operating, but that was just kind of where she put that. I don't know if it was because we didn't have another account we could have used, and I didn't use that account. So anyway, that's where they put it. But what that covers is any annual award recognition, state meetings that we have for revitalization when they're coming down. It includes any of the EDCM meetings, the Maine Development Foundation Annual Conference, the EDCM Annual Conference, the Maine Downtown Annual Conference, et cetera. Any of those would fall under that category as well. So that's my budget. Do you have any questions?
I have one question. The funds that were not in the budget last year, where did we cover them?
Mine.
Those came out of the budget this year. The difference between professional development and your committees and events supplies. I'm just looking at, like, we have the committees and events supplies for $1,000. Professional development, $1,500, and membership and dues, $1,725.
Right.
So what's in the professional development line?
Those are more of the training programs, the recertification, like sometimes you have to go for the recertification for CDBG. Sometimes there's like a grant writing class. There's the leadership programs, the Maine Downtown Institute, which holds all of the institutes for the Maine Downtown Network. That includes all of those type things. So I usually keep that kind of separated as if it's like a professional development as opposed to.
That's covered by your dues.
No, those are all just dues. The one that's listed membership dues and meetings, those are all our membership dues.
The 5381 committee events, can you buy giveaway things for those different meetings, or are those costs to attend?
No, those are usually costs to attend, or if we're entertaining, like we have the state coming for that downtown walkabout, and we're going to be doing lunch for that event, because we have several people that are going to be spending, 3 hours there. So we're going to be providing a lunch, so sometimes it would cover something along that line.
I have a question. Chamber of Commerce, $225. Doesn't the town belong, so?
That is the due. That's the dues that the town pays. It just comes out of my line. Yeah, that's the dues for the town to belong to the chamber. Yeah.
The 6850 paid by the RRP.
Yes.
Is that based on a percentage of your salary? So I mean, when we figure in the 1.75, does that increase because of the 1.75?
No, that's a flat fee. That's a flat rate, yeah.
That's not a percentage.
No.
And the other question is going through the other ones, maybe Steve can answer this better, is to like the town office. Of course, I know telephone part of that is cell phone use, and part of that is, is there each department billed separately for their in-house phones? I mean, how does that work? Because it seems that we pay a pretty substantial amount and started adding up all the phones throughout
We do.
town
The
office.
phone bill's quite large.
Because of the individual lines? I mean, is that what makes it so expensive? Or, I mean, I was just kind of curious. Even with the cell phones, it seems that, is there a
We
group
pay for
package?
X number of lines. Let me just break it out. Everybody, with cell phones, everybody pays their own. So that's.
So it's not done through a group discount from the town?
Well, we get a group for X number of phones that we have. So there is a package that we line purchases.
It just seems too expensive, that's all, maybe I'm got a little bit.
Can we
Part
get
of-
a view of the, I believe it was one communication, right? With who our landline provider is?
It's Oxford reports. I will,
Oxford
you want to
Network.
break down the
Our
fire department?
Yeah, I was just trying to, if we showed what the cost was in total coming from the vendor, and then how we split it out by the different departments.
It seems like every department has a little different cost when it comes to phones, so I was just curious how it's, I mean, I didn't realize like, we have the parks, you know, if you have the Beaver Park, it's probably a totally different setup than it is here, but within the town office, it seems so, I'm not sure if they evenly divide that, if one person gets more usage or. Nothing, it's just.
No,
just
that's
when we're
fine.
looking at some of the areas, and
Right.
some of the phone lines are pretty large, if you start adding.
And one of the things, too, that you might want to keep in mind when you're looking at the cell phone usage that makes the packages a little bit different, I think, is that some of the people that have PDAs that are connected, that makes, you know, because you end up having the internet package on top of it, and so that kind of is a little bit higher than if you just have a phone that you're using. So that's another component.
Any additional questions?
There are quite a few businesses in town that are closing and everything, and I'm kind of wondering what you're doing to try to fill those slots to bring businesses into town.
Well, actually, we've been, our business counseling has increased. We've been having several folks that are interested in opening businesses, so we've been doing a little bit of counseling and business planning with some of those folks, and some of the places that are empty are actually being eyed by some of those people as a potential site once they get to that point where they're ready to open. We are really marketing our loan monies so that businesses know that it's available to them to help them get startup monies and that sort of thing.
Can we please stay with just budget
Yeah.
questions?
Okay.
This doesn't really pertain to our actual budget, so
Okay.
I'd like to stay just focused on the budget here.
I can let you know that. I'll send you an email, Dot. Anybody have anything
Are there
else?
specific budget questions in economic development? So, okay.
Have a good night. David, for letting me
All right, next one up is the police department.
Pass out my PowerPoint proposal here. It's in blue for some reason.
Something to do with the blue side?
I'm not gonna
Go to the corner.
Keep going to the sales, the only one with problems.
Nice and long and red.
You want to tell everybody?
Thank you.
One more. Perfect. All right.
First budget of three is the 02200 police budget. Okay, that's it. I'm ready for questions. If you look at the blue sheet that I handed out, I think that's good information that you need to know that our business is on the rise in Lisbon. Our calls for service increased over 4% last year. Our assaults increased 35%. Our domestic assaults increased 18%. Our burglaries increased 64%. We had a 103% increase in the total value of property stolen in the town last year. And the 200% increases in armed robberies and rapes. Our numbers were very low in the past, and it doesn't take much to hit 200% when you go from 0 to 2 or from 1 to 3. But the big number there, 12%, that's the kicker right there, because overall Part 1 crimes in total increased 12% in 2009 over 2008. And I can tell you that the first 2 months of 2010, we're likely going to be ahead of these numbers because it's not slowing down any. Also, if you note, we had a 59% increase in OUI arrests last year. So the final piece there is the police employment data. I put that out usually annually so you can look at it. That's the 2009 Department of Public Safety figure, 1.88 officers per thousand is the state average for municipal police departments. Our 2010 budget had us budgeted at 15 full-time officers, which is 1.61, which is 3 under the state average. And I'm afraid the budget before you this evening is knocking that down to 14 full-time officers. Again, when the state average is 18, and all of the work requirements are, as you can see, increasing as well. So that's just an informative bulletin there. Please keep it in mind when you are making your decisions and so forth. We all understand what's going on in the state and towns and so forth, but we are a particular, I don't want to say we're a business, but I guess we are a business. And our problem right now is that our business is increasing, and it's increasing by leaps and bounds in some categories, yet our personnel to take care of it is potentially decreasing. So you need to bear all that in mind, please. Going to the police budget. I hope you've had an opportunity to look at it because every line in it is in the negative, just about, compared to the previous year. The biggest change with the police budget this year is that I pulled all of the, and I've brought you up on this before, but I've pulled all of the communications costs out of this budget. We now have a separate communications/dispatch, whatever you want to call it, budget, which is 02202. And we'll be getting to that shortly, but so all of our dispatchers and costs associated with the dispatchers has been taken out of the police budget. And that other project I'm working on is moving at a snail's pace, but it's moving forward as well. Matter of fact, I had a visit today from PUC, Emergency Services Communications Bureau, and Fairpoint Communications, looking at our comm center to return it as a PSAP. So we're moving ahead on that. Any questions on the police budget?
The 5410 line equipment, that's a pretty drastic loss. Is that because that was part of communications?
I'm sorry, what line are you on?
Second page there, 5410 equipment.
5410 equipment, that cut was, if you recall, I'm sure some of the councils will, that's the line that I put in when we change over the equipment from old car to new car. So that was done to 2 vehicles last year, so that amount of money that did that didn't have to remain in there. There is one vehicle in this budget. That's the one that was in last year's budget that we took out. That is the 5500 line. And I believe Steve can probably, I think that's a 3-year lease purchase, Steve? You would? Okay.
Chief, how did, last year we kept one car, the new, want to see how it went. How did that turn out?
Still running. We,
Did the maintenance go up?
oh, the maintenance is much higher on that car than of course, the newer cars. We've tried to be fair, as Councilor Crafts, indicated. We want to see what this will do when we keep building the mileage on it like we do the other cars. If I was to give you a graph chart or whatever, you would see that Unit 2's maintenance peaks much higher than 1, 3, or 4, 1, 3, or 5. But matter of just last, good question. Last week, $500 and some odd bill out of Brunswick Ford for a $50 part, because Public Works couldn't touch any of the stuff. It's just where it was and what it was. They had to take the entire dash out of the car to fix the heating system in the car. So we had to get and that's not the whole bill yet. We had to get radio maintenance in to remove all of the radio equipment that's in the center console, because that's up against the dash, so all that had to come out. Then Ford did the dash, fixed the problem, put the dash back, brought us the car back, then we called radio maintenance back to reinstall all of the radio and console. So I haven't got that second bill, but
Can you get us a breakdown of the service to see what's really costing us monthly for the pay?
yeah, we've been keeping a log on that. We've been keeping a log on that. If we didn't have those transmission issues last year, I would say I'd like to try it again, in all honesty, but those transmission issues killed us. You know, when we lost 2 transmissions back to back in a month, that was a hard pill to swallow. It really was. And right now we're on a holding pattern with the Explorer on that, because that transmission is slipping right now, but they don't want to replace what they think it needs until it's actually done. They want to be 100% sure. And again, that vehicle really should have been on the rotation last year as well, but we just didn't put it there because of the economy.
You said we lost 2 transmissions last year?
Mhm.
One of the cars was the one that we were leaving for an extended time.
What we did last year, if you remember, is during the budget cycle, as a matter of fact, when all this was happening, this same time last year, we lost 2 transmissions. We put a rebuilt transmission into the car that we anticipated would be trading, and we put a factory new transmission, which is rebuilt too, but it's factory, into the car that we kept. So we kept what we believed to be the better transmission in the car that we kept, which was Unit 2. And the other car got a shelf transmission that, of course, had Zippo warranty on it, and when it came time to trade, that car was gone.
So actually, we have no way to compare the other car because it's gone. The other transmission that we replaced left with the car we traded it. So that means, what I'm trying to say is that we had 2 automobiles that needed transmissions. One of them was a car that we was keeping, and then the other one we traded away on a new
Right,
car.
right.
So we can't have a comparison of that particular issue, is what I'm trying to get to. Like you said, the car that we kept was a transmission issue, and if we were to run both.
I think what Councilor Crafts is asking for, he wants to see what the maintenance history primarily is on the car that we kept over what we normally would keep it, because you're not going to be able to compare it to the 2 new cars that we bought, because they've had, you know, practically Zippo for maintenance so far. I understand that's what you're really looking for, is to see what our experience has been in this extra year for that car.
See if the numbers is working. I mean,
Yeah.
breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, Scott?
Yeah, the part that was replaced, not under warranty, and the vehicle you're talking about, the part, the $500?
Oh, no, that car's 100 and some odd thousand miles on that car.
How old's the vehicle?
06 with 100 and, well, that's the car.
It'll be 4 years old.
Oh, yeah, it's 100 and, I don't remember what the miles is now, but it's way past, Ford only has a 60,000 mile warranty.
We buy most of our vehicles, police department vehicles from Ford, Brunswick Ford.
Well, it's not Brunswick Ford, but they're Fords.
Ford, okay. I wondered if...
The next couple of years will be interesting years, because 2011 is the last year of the Ford Crown Vic. And Ford is putting the Taurus into their police vehicle. But Chevrolet is coming back out in 2011 with a rear-wheel drive Caprice. So, yeah. So there's going to be a lot of something going on. There's only 1 year left for Crown Vics. And Crown Vic has been the mainstay since the 90s. 75% of all police vehicles sold in the United States are Ford Crown Vics.
I was wondering if the possibility to get some sort of a maintenance agreement for?
We always price out maintenance agreements, and it's just not, our history, we've been pretty lucky. Last year was the blip on the radar. Last year was the first time we lost transmissions in Ford since we'd had Fords. And like I say, that was a blimp on the radar because we lost 2 transmissions in the same year. We'd never lost transmissions in Fords until that happened. Chrysler products, that's a different story. We used to keep a spare transmission on the shelf when we had Dodge Cruisers years ago because they were dropping all the time. But
I had a Chrysler car, and it's not a Chrysler, but a Regal Medallion. Must have been, I found out it was a Frenchman, no offense, but it must have been, it was built in France on a Monday after a hard weekend.
the Ford Crown Vic overall has been one very, very good car for us. Like I said, we had an extremely unusual blimp on the radar last year when we lost 2 transmissions in like 2 weeks or a month. I don't remember what the time frame was, but that was really a hard pill to swallow. But we had never lost transmissions before then.
Line 5340, I think that says repair and maintenance for buildings. Is that something else, or? Trying to get used to it.
Yeah, I know, and
I didn't know you had any buildings.
no, I don't. But I can tell you that when we had the budget transition, and I brought those old pages, I think, because it was a learning process for me as well. Matter of fact, I still have the old format because I still look at it. 5340 used to be my 2250, which was repair and maintenance contractual. And that's where she put it when she did the entire budget redo.
Was that different than the 5345 one?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Dale.
Is that different than what the 5345 line would be, is repair and maintenance on the...
5345 is repair and maintenance parts.
The ones in maintenance agreement.
333, see, like the Brunswick Ford bill, because that's at Brunswick Ford, that's totally contractual. But when Public Works does a job for us, and they go and buy the parts at Napa or whatever, it comes out of that, the other line.
I just want to make sure you hadn't acquired any buildings or something that we had to maintain.
Not today, but tomorrow's another day.
Roger?
On the calls for service, you have everything in percentages. Is there any way we can get some hard numbers on that? You know, 50% increase and there's only 2 of one thing, and 50% sounds like a big thing. I'd like to see some hard numbers.
50%?
Well, like
Yeah.
you have here, 35% they're solved, 35%, but what is the actual hard numbers? And 18%, 64%, 103%.
Yeah.
I'd just like to see some hard numbers for those things.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Yep.
Do you have any idea why the increase in all of these assaults and burglaries and everything?
The economy?
If I knew, we would try to fix it. But the majority of our burglaries, over 90% of our burglaries are drug-related. The ones that are solved, and we have a 50% clearance rate on burglaries in '09, those burglaries that we were able to solve, better than 90% of them are drug-related. They're burglarizing, stealing the property, and hawking it in order to maintain their drug habit.
Are these mostly residents or vehicles? I know about, what was it, about a month ago?
These burglaries are either residential or business.
About a month ago or a little less. there
We had a
was lot
rash of motor vehicle burglaries, yep.
And it was in my neighborhood.
That was all over the place. We had 15 motor vehicle burglaries by one suspect who was apprehended, yeah.
Does he have to buy some fingerprints on a,
We're talking about the budget.
Yeah, the budget, please. Lori?
I just have a quick question.
so it's all related.
Of your budget, your line items that
That's right.
are 50% expended year-to-date, and we've got like 3 months left of the year. Do you have some anticipated expenses coming that might be later in the year?
what I do is, we buy it as we need it. And sometimes we get through a year and we don't need some of the items, so that way, if you look at the end of the fiscal year budget report, you'll see there's some money left over that rolls over. That's the best way to do it. We don't want to get into the habit of, well, let me see, we're going to do budgets now, so we're at the 50% of the year, so we all better spend 50% of our budget, so the counselor doesn't ask us, how come you've only spent 30% when we're at 50%?
But part of, like, I'll use uniforms, for example, with a 12,000 budget and you only spent the 57, 34.
Yeah, the uniforms is a contractual item, and each officer is allowed a monetary amount per person, and they're allowed any time during the course of the fiscal year to purchase whatever their needs are, be it winter uniform, summer uniform, whatever it is, up to that limit that they have. So uniforms, I could pull the uniform piece out, and you'll see where I've probably got half the people who have maxed their budget and half the people who haven't even touched it yet.
I was asking for a point of reference that if you anticipate spending all of that, if we could look at maybe realigning some of the figures going into the next budget. If you plan on spending that because there's buying some of your folks.
Yeah. Again, that particular subline you pick's not a good subline because that subline is budgeted per the contract requirement, so you can't anticipate that. Fuel, if you looked at that subline, right, fuel is, we don't know where fuel is going. This fiscal year, we're comfortable in the fuel line. We've budgeted, at Steve's direction, we budgeted the same amounts for next fiscal year in our fuel lines, again, because no one knows where fuel is going. But it's a subline that's there, and all you have to do is pull our expense history reports up in the budgets, and you'll see that nothing else is going to the fuel line but fuel. So it's not like it can be used for other purposes.
What are these, what's the year-to-date numbers are as of what month end period? So it's as of the end of February?
The difference in the fuel, that was one of the questions I was asking, Lori did also. I mean, is that only in the cost factor that we see that difference, or is it actually a difference in what your,
Well, I still, and I have still put a mileage cap per shift on our cars. We hold to that as best as we possibly can, and I think what you'll find there is that during this particular fiscal year, we haven't maxed our cost per gallon that we had budgeted for, so we're going to undoubtedly see some type of savings in that subline. You will in the police budget. I'm assuming you'll see similar in some other budgets as well, but that's because of the, we've had a fortunate year.
I didn't know if you would actually change your, like you say, your mileage or whatever that you actually do to actually try to reduce the cost.
I did a mileage restriction probably 2 years ago now, when the first time gas hit $4 a gallon. We put the mileage restriction on, we've never lifted it.
Question. Do you have your uniforms cleaned locally? I think we still have a dry cleaner in town, don't we?
Well, you have to, we don't use, if you look at the expense on that, that line's barely used. But again, it's another one of those contractual lines where they have the ability to if they want. And I budget way under what our liability is on that line, because all the uniforms today are wash and wear. So I think we may have a detective that has some of his suits and so forth dry cleaned occasionally. And I don't believe I have any uniforms that are dry cleaned now, because everything's wash and wear.
Uniforms and safety, could you give a little breakdown on safety? Is that federal test and...
That's not my title. That's the software. That's the uniform line. That's the uniform line.
Question for the town manager. are there any step increases in this budget? I never had asked or inquired about it in any of the other budgets. Any step increases in this budget?
This is all the, except for administration, is longevity increases, but all the union employees are contractual, so it's whatever we negotiate.
You didn't answer my question, are there any step increases?
I did, yes. I said in administration, in police chiefs and lieutenant, any non-union employees has longevity increases in their budget, which is similar to a step increase.
So, yes, there are step increases in this particular budget.
Yes.
So that's in every budget.
Every budget, not
Every
just
budget for non-union.
every budget for non-union if they've been here 5 years or greater.
Can you provide us a breakdown of that?
Yes, I can.
This budget also has step increases for union employees. Because again, you have to remember, even though they don't have a contract, the provisions of the previous contract go on forever. So anybody who is scheduled for a step increase in fiscal year 11 is in here already. I built it in.
Both of your unions, Matt and sergeants?
Matt and sergeant, unions?
Well, there would be both. I can't tell you who is and who isn't right now.
I'm curious to find out what we pay out in step increases in the year. Thank you.
Another interesting point in this budget, I think the 53rd week is like, I'm going to say around $12,000, just the 53rd pay week, which is a hit that, I mean, yeah, that's gone next year.
Can you explain the holiday enforcement line there and also the crime?
That's a grant. That's a grant.
It looks like it doesn't have
Yeah,
negative.
everything, they put all the, that's an old grant that's
Oh,
expired
it's
now.
negative now.
Everything down, from 5,600 down, those are all past or current grants.
Just what he was
Matter of fact, I think
Does it have a negative?
gave me a notice today on, because they pay the town electronically, and finance sends me a slip asking me exactly which line this goes into. And used to be a day when we actually got a hard check in the mail and I could walk it over and put it in, but those days are gone.
This question is asked the chief, because how come that one don't have a negative up front of it? All the other grants have negative figures, and that one actually is the positive. Yeah.
Well, it's 4 of them.
In all honesty, I can't explain that. All I do is when they work a grant and I submit the grant number on payroll, and then the rest of it goes to another office, and that's where I could get confused when they try to tell me a negative is a positive and the positive is actually a negative. So if that's been totally reimbursed from the state yet, I honestly don't know. It hasn't. So
What it could be is that we've expended the cost and we haven't received the grant yet. So it's showing up as a positive, and once we get the funding, it
Yeah.
will net out to some value, which is...
in the real world should be zero. Should net out to
Yeah,
zero, right?
Unless you didn't expend all of your grant and you got the full grant reimbursement,
Right.
then that's why you might have negative numbers up above. Because you got 50,000 in your grant, but you only spent 48, so you got a negative 2,000 showing in your year-to-date actuals.
That's where the positive is negative.
Correct.
Thank you. End of the fiscal year, I always used to argue that, because I thought I had money in the budget, and they'd say, oh, no, that's not, that shows positive, but it's actually negative, it's not there, the state still owes us that, and I'm like, oh, whatever, because again, the state's budget fiscal, most of my grants through the state are actually federal grants, and the federal fiscal year doesn't match our fiscal year. So we're forever carrying over deficits that, fortunately, we have finance and they figure it out.
Any other questions? Okay. Next budget.
ACO, 02201. No PowerPoint with this one. Again, pretty simple. What you'll what you'll see for increases there, if you recall, the ACO contract is budget. We budget for 3 towns to share animal control. So in this particular budget, we put all the health costs, Social Security, state retirement, everything is encompassed in this particular budget because the 3 towns share the expense. So these increases are just what they are: medical insurance increase, workers' compensation insurance increase, FICA. I don't know why FICA is that. Well, it's probably because of the 1.75 and the 53rd week. That's why that increase would be there. And that's it. Gasoline, we did bump up gasoline in that because if you remember, you do remember last year we brought on Bowdoin, and I told you then it was kind of, we're guessing what we were going to need, and we're going to need a good couple of years under our belts to get a good handle on this tri-town plan. And that gasoline is just that, the extra mileage and so forth that's had to go out there to respond to calls. I think it's working out real well if you want to write some numbers down. In this particular budget, the bottom line, I hope your bottom line says 66742. Of that 66742, Lisbon is responsible for 34863 of it. 34863 and 15 cents. Now that 34863 is 4,600 of it, and again, those of you who were here last year remember 4,600 of it is Lisbon only expense. Each town, all 3 towns contract with their own shelters. Sabatis contracts with Lewiston Auburn Humane Society. We contract with Marty Ford, and Bowdoin contracts with Mid-Coast and whatever it's called in Brunswick. So all 3 towns have different shelters. So all 3 towns have their own shelter budget. Our shelter budget's in here, which is the 3,000 in line 5273. And just above 5273 on 5202, you'll see the animal fees. Those are both contractual costs that are negotiated with Mr. Ford to take in the animals that we get just in the town of Lisbon. So that's ours. So if you take that bottom 66,742 and you remove that 4,600, then you have a total shared tri-town budget of 62,142.
Actually, last year during the budget season, we were discussing the idea that the situation we have right now for sheltering may change over a period of time.
It's going to change at some point in time, yes. We're keeping our fingers crossed that it's not going to be this coming year.
We looking for alternatives besides the big alternative we talked about before?
I don't know, Fern, I don't know what other alternatives are out there for us. There's a shelter in Lewiston, and there's a shelter in Brunswick, and both of them have indicated they'd be happy to take us on, but it's a per capita cost. So that cost will more than double to do the shelter.
Have you talked to any of the kennels in town that would be possibly interested in doing what Mr. Ford's doing?
I haven't, no.
I was just curious if we'd looked into that, because I know there
The
was...
problem we're dealing with shelters now, and this is where I get to zing the state, is there's a number of, and I'm sure Dale has seen them coming up, there are a number of legislative documents that are out there pending right now under animal welfare laws. And most every one of those animal welfare law changes that the state wants to make takes the burden of the cost from the state to the town. Rabies is the biggest example. Boy, we get an animal that we have to quarantine. Not too long ago, the state took care of all that. They don't take care of that anymore. That's our dime. It's more than a dime. That's our cost. And you have to quarantine those animals at a licensed shelter, so they're going to get their fees. It's just animal control is going to go up. I told you this last year, and I don't know when we're going to realize it in Lisbon, because Mr. Ford's very good to us. But when that time comes and Mr. Ford retires, we're going to have to be hunting hard. But we are going to get, there's no question in my mind, we are going to get costs diverted from the state to the towns in a lot of those respects with animals.
The other two partners that we're working with, either one of them have shelters inside their town? Bowden or Sabatis, do either one of them have shelters? They all go to...
Sabatis goes to the Humane Society in Lewiston,
So they pay
and
per
Bowden
capita.
goes to the Mid-Coast one in Brunswick.
So they're already paying per capita.
They are already paying per capita.
I was just wondering, I mean, I know we have some other kennels in town, and I weren't sure if it was ever thought that if that was an option...
I think the
mean,
concern with the private kennel today is the liability, especially the way the laws are changing and the rabies issues.
Mr. Ford does a good job of that, to get my dog out of jail there a couple times before, so I mean, but the...
You have quite a fenced-in area in the back of that body shop. Maybe you could turn some of that into a kennel.
Tell me what the numbers are per capita, maybe I'll have a discussion.
But anyway, and again, I put you on notice last year. It's something that's going to happen at some point in time, and for Lisbon, we are going to see an increase there
I was
because of
just wondering,
shelter.
'cause I know you mentioned last year, and I didn't see it in this budget, so evidently Mr. Ford's willing to
Well,
go for...
Mr. Ford is still willing to and he's also our backup in, for Cooper. When Cooper's down sick or on vacation, he's still plugging along doing that as well. So, knock on wood, we're still fortunate with this right now. Going back to those numbers, Bowden's share is 11.5%. It's $71.46 and 33 cents. Sabatis' share is 39.8% at $24,732 and 52 cents. And Lisbon's share is 48.7%, which is $30,263.15, for a total shared budget of $62,142. And I think, again, I know Steve gets more contact from Bowden than I do, but I think it's working out pretty well so far. I haven't received any complaints from the other towns. I've never received a complaint from Sabatis, knock on wood. They've been a pretty good partner with us on this for, oh goodness, 5 years maybe? I don't recall offhand, but right around there.
Where do licensing fees come in? Do they show on this budget or another?
That's not in here. No, I don't have, there's no revenue in this budget.
On the revenue side, they actually go through the town clerk office. Any other questions from the animal control budget? Okay. Next one.
Communications, 02202. What I did here, as I stated earlier, I took all the dispatch personnel and their associated costs out of the police budget. Another thing we're going to do this particular fiscal year for FY11, we currently have 4 full-time dispatchers. We'll be changing that. We'll be working with 3 full-time dispatchers and filling the other 40-hour-a-week position with part-time personnel. Some of you may recall in my proposal with Androscoggin SO that I had suggested strongly to them that we could probably, if we had 3 people in that comm center for a county comm center, that one of those 3 could likely be part-time. And I think this is probably a right time to do it and see if it works for us. So it's working out because I have a full-time dispatcher retiring May 1st. And I spoke with Steve, gave him my thoughts, and immediately changed to this concept. We're going to try that 40-hour a week with 2 part-time people. 2 part-time people dedicated to 16 hours and 24 hours a week on rotating weeks.
That actually is reflected in this budget?
Yes, it is.
We would look at this budget last year, the full-time wages would actually be higher? Or
Well, I think the 149 was probably the,
Full-time.
I think that was probably when I first did the budget, back whenever the first time was, back in December when we started doing these. And once he submitted his resignation, I was able to make an amendment to this. What you do see is a temporary line jumped dramatically, but again, that's because I overall, from part-time, from full-time to part-time, when you take in wages, overtime, uniforms, you're talking $21,000 difference. So that's what we're hopefully going to realize. Pardon?
That doesn't count benefits, right? Because you're saving on benefits because the part-time people don't get benefits.
So I'll put it in that 21,000, right? The 21,000 figure includes wages and benefits.
Well, I'm looking at what I don't recall if that benefit was part of that or not when I did that math. But I remember there was a $21,000 actual savings.
That would be less for that. That's savings less than.
That was my question of the town manager, do part-timers
Oh.
get benefits?
Also, that particular dispatcher that's retiring, he was at the maximum level on vacation. Part-timers we don't have that as well. So, I mean, there's a number of little variables there that helped us with some savings on that. But again, hopefully it works. I may be back here next year telling you it didn't work, but we're going to give it what we can.
Any questions on communication? Okay. Thank you. Next up is town clerk.
Good evening, councilors and residents. Town clerk and election department maintains the books that holds our local ordinances, maintains the list of registered voters, certifies petitions, supervises elections, along with issuing local business licenses and permits, vital records, and provides general information to the public and other town departments. The vault contains approximately 400 boxes and volumes of evaluation books, vital records, books of and boards and committee meeting minutes, vital records, and town meeting records. Estimated total capacity for the vault is about 500 boxes. The town must keep about 3/4 of the accounting records for 6 or 7 years, and the rest is stored permanently. To prevent overcrowding and in order to retain enough space for the long-term documents, it may be necessary to have other departments follow the finance department's new protocol of keeping short-term documents within their departments, bringing only long-term storage items to the vault area. The vault's #1 priority probably should be for permanent long-term storage. We recently prepared about 50 boxes for destruction. These boxes of records were listed in the state rules for disposition and local government records, and they no longer needed to be retained, such as old ballots, receipts, and canceled checks over 6 years old, and correspondence and stuff like that. Vital records research continues to account for about 2/3 of our revenue in the town clerk's office, and it's still growing steadily. We brought in 5,000 last year, and this year it looks like we're over 5,500. The state's considering legislation to raise the local fee from $10 to $15 per document, raising the bureau permit fee from $5 to $20, and requiring that the towns send the state 25% of the revenue generated from these sales, which means we would receive probably, I estimate, $500 more in revenue. But after sending the state its new 25% share. However, the state is considering that the towns pay for the paper that we use to make the certified copies on. Then I question whether we will make any revenue. My department answers the general phone line and handles a wide range of daily interactions with the public, well over 5,000 a year, requiring patience, proficiency, and decision-making skills. I take council meeting minutes. Both Beth and I transcribe them together. Beth takes the Board of Appeals meeting minutes and transcribes them. Jody takes and transcribes the planning board minutes. Since our restoration program began back in 1989, the town has restored to date 43 volumes of historical records, including the road book, town meeting books, birth, deaths, and marriages, which are available to the public for public research. During the same time, we bound 72 volumes, including planning board, appeals board, council, and selectmen minutes, the road book and a naturalization book, along with town reports. Feel free to stop in anytime and see them. The grant we received paid for the electronic copy of the road book that's now available online. And I've been informed by several people they enjoy looking at that. They've been able to use that, and saves time at our counter as well, not having to do as much research. Today I'm preparing for another election, like last year at this time. We held an April referendum last year for bonding road improvements. A school budget validation referendum was held in June. Another school budget validation referendum was held in July. Then we held another annual municipal election, along with the state's referendum election in November. We had a record turnout for that. Elections are very time-consuming, ordering ballots, processing absentees, testing voting machines, hiring and training election workers, supervising that day, communicating with the media and the press, and recording the totals, putting the supplies away, and maintaining the voter list. I send new legislation adopted by the council to the revisor's office for incorporating into our code book. I think I have a supplement coming in next week, as a matter of fact. This year, the council changed the personnel policy in April, approved revisions to the shoreline zoning ordinance, Section 75, non-conforming uses, lots and structures, and Section 7661, off-street parking and loading, along with changing residency requirements for ad hoc committees. Those changes are due to arrive in 45 days or so. That's when I typed this up, but now they're coming in next week. Legislative updates are available online while this codification process goes underway. So if you needed to see things while they're being processed before they get to be codified into the book, they are available online. This budget includes 3 elections. The one you're looking at includes a state gubernatorial and referendum election combined with our municipal candidate and referendum election in November, a school budget validation and referendum election in June 2011, and a small election for perhaps another extra bond referendum in April. Seems to be that we're doing something like that every year now, or it could be used for another school redo election. We typically have an election in April, so I did budget for that. Each year's budget is calculated based on the type of election, the number of hours that I predict that it will take to wrap up the election. Next year, I would like to recommend to consider funding $6,000 to post our website live video streaming of council meeting minutes so residents can review them at any time or view them at any time. A few other features go along with that, including indexing. And I have some papers I wanted to pass out to you. I know Steve and I talked about this early on in our budget process, but due to the economy and other issues, we decided to cut it out this year. So it had been cut, but I did want to just bring it to the council's attention that you can see this service would provide an indexing system for not only us as well as residents, and it puts the information online so that you can tap into exactly where you want to be in a meeting. So if you had a particular item that you remembered that you wanted to see, it would tap into that meeting, and then you would be able to, because it's indexed, go to that particular section. It's not something you'd have to research. It isn't. We pulled it. But we wanted you to be aware of it to help you maybe consider it next year if you find funding available or if you hear of any grants that might be available. I think that it would be a great service to provide for the public and ourselves. I estimate that we would need 3,000 ballots for this November and budgeted for 2 ballots, both double-sided. Even a couple of charter questions could set us over 1 double-sided ballot quickly. Last year, in an off-election year, there were 4,029 ballots cast. Remember, 4,897 were cast at the presidential in 2008, so our elections do seem to be quite busy and very well attended in the fall. I continue to look for ways to conserve. I have a list of supplies here if you're interested in what we do purchase for supplies. It encompasses vault storage boxes, vinyl record binders, mailing labels, cassette tapes, batteries, indexes, index tabs, the paper that we use for our licenses and so forth. It includes the election, printer ribbons and cartridges and that sort of thing. Just to update you where we are with...
Can we get you to give it to the budget?
Yep. Is there, the budget looks pretty self-explanatory, right? Do you have any questions on it?
Walk through and explain to us the increases and what's driving it?
The extra elections, basically, because there's no increase in the town clerk side of it. So we budgeted some of that for the April election. And you have a June school referendum in there.
Why don't you take us through line by line?
All right, where do you want me to begin?
No, like on the 5100, we're going to 1600 on the 1200. That's because you have an additional, then you have 3 elections. How many was in last year's budget? Elections.
Last year's budget, I don't have in front of me. I wasn't like prepared to talk about last year's budget. Okay, but I would need that copy to tell you exactly the difference. Each year, I budgeted just for what we're planning to use. Which line in particular are we looking at? Elected and appointed officials?
That's one to start with.
All right. In this line, you have $691.20 for 4 registrars in November at the annual election and state referendum. We have $345.60 for 2 registrars in the June school budget referendum. We have $345.60 for the 2 registrars in the April bond referendum. We have $50 for the registrar to go to the high school and attend the caucus. And we have $231.60 for an extra registrar around November to handle absentees. Got all these numbers in here. The next line is just salaries, right? No overtime in this budget. In the temporary line, we have $1,400 for election clerks for Ward 1 and 2 for the school election. We have $1,400 for the election clerks for Ward 1 and 2 in the gubernatorial election. We have $1,100 for election clerks in Ward 1 and 2 for the extra bond election. We have $300 for a warden in November, $300 for a warden at the school, and $300 for the warden in April. We have $356 for the ABS setup and election and election day. We have, for each of those, there's $356 for November, June, and April. Wardens for, let's see, wardens and election clerk training, $186.50. The total is $6,056.
So, in the that makes up the 6,056.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that represents 3 elections, right? And how many elections?
And election clerk training. Let's see. We had more than I had budgeted because we ended up with, I referred to those here a minute ago. We had the April election, we had the June election, then we had the July election, and we had the August election, then we had the October election, we had the November election. So even though we budgeted for a certain number, we ended up with more.
That was 6 elections, like county director. But our actuals, well, some of those were in last fiscal. We didn't do in this year's budget.
It would be on the 2010 year-to-date.
Well, no, it wouldn't all be in 2010. That's what I'm trying to.
Did you want to take out a certain election? I can go back and just plug those numbers out and remove it if you're thinking of doing that.
I'm just trying to understand what the difference is in the increases. I think
They're all budgeted differently, yeah. It's,
elections, but last year we had more elections than this year with the flame.
yeah, and it's hard to remember what we budgeted and what we actually used because they're completely different each year. And this is what we anticipated, we expect that we're going to need for this coming year.
Contracted services.
What line number is that? 5215. Contracted services. These are for police wages for November, 150, police wages for June, 150, police wages for the extra bond, 150, the public works setup in November at the old LES building. It takes a little longer to do that, so we budgeted 400 this year, and Public Works will set up at, let's see, one is for November for 400, and one is for June, and one's for April. We typically take a little longer now to set them up because we cart stuff off-site before we used to use this room. So it's about $50 an increase in that. So you do see a little increase there. That's the kind of thing you were interested in? All right.
Professional services.
Professional services, 5258. We have the code on the internet fee for 400. We have a supplement number 17 for 2,000. We have the ORDS online now service is for 150. Browns River to restore the last book in the record series for clerks is 1,700. A restoration book for births and 900. Programming for an election 600. The June election, the April election. The April election is 400. The supplement number 18 is 2,000.
So what changed from last year?
How much was it last year?
7,500.
And the total is 8,000. So you're looking for an increase. I mean, I think that your supplements, because they're just a little bit more in detail, you seem to be doing more in your zoning and you're trying to catch up with your code. The extra's probably in there for that. This is one of those budgets that, should you guys have more supplement work, or, well, I guess if we have more election work, we do less supplement work. Programming for elections is expensive. And so if you're going to run over because we have extra programming expense, and we're not going to be able to codify as much. So we're in hopes that it will all even out.
Any other questions?
Repair and maintenance, the 5345, that's taking care of the voting equipment?
AccuVote machines, to rent them is 2,000, and the maintenance is 400. Well, we didn't have to rent machines, we were hoping to buy them. I was just getting to that paragraph in my presentation, which says that we set aside funds 4 years in a row to purchase additional AccuVote machines and continue to carry forward these funds because the state has not made a decision on which machines to purchase. The AccuVote machines have been around for the past 15 years. The AccuVote has been upgraded 3 times. I believe the first version is still in use. We're using the second version, which is the version the state recently replaced all the Optech 3Ps with, and the third version just came out. LHS agreed to let us use these leased funds towards our purchase of either the current version or the newest version, depending upon what the state approves. If the state goes with the newest version, then the state will replace our existing machines, so our equipment will match, and we will use what we have saved up for the other 2 machines. The state's expecting to make a decision by August, so that we're all on the same page. I know we've heard that before, but the RFP really did go out, so I really do believe we will make a decision before August. But meanwhile, we just recently spent some money on rentals for the last November election as well. So it's either we do or we don't. We may need it for the purchase of the new machines. I think the latest is there's no guarantee they're going to go with the same machine that we're using right now. We thought they would, but there's not. That's not a guarantee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Chief, when, you know, we broke out the communications? Going backwards, I'm sorry. When we're looking at the communications, is pretty much all the costs you put there for the wages and professional development. As far as for like phone, software, communication, we charged it all for that? Is that basically just a...
I kept all of the phones and software maintenance, everything. I kept it in the police budget. It would be a nightmare to try to break that out.
Some of that would change.
At some point in time, you're right, at some point in time, if we get into a consolidated center, we're going to have to sit down and do some hard math on that.
So out of that, I mean, some of that's in the phones and some of that's in your software agreements, that's part of the police department still, right?
And again, that's, our RMS system is both police and communications. It's all in one package. We have many different modules. Yes, if we get in, I would say down the road, we continue this way or we get into consolidation, we can pull out some of the modules as to which one was which and so forth. It's just like supervision. The supervisors for this are still within the police budget, even though a good part of their time is dedicated to the dispatch side.
However, you wouldn't be able to follow totally, it just numbers would change, it wouldn't actually all come out properly.
Correct. They'd be adjusted, so there'd be some in both.
I was just curious, because that, the dollar figure we're looking at there isn't our total communications dispatch, it's actually.
And the phone piece, that would be a real difficult one to try to break out because we have.
Oh, absolutely. I was just curious why lines. Sorry about that.
Okay, recreation. So you're going to take us through your budget?
I am. I'm going to go on bullet statements once I get the presentation going. But I do want to say a couple paragraphs on, something. I want to explain some of our goals that we're trying to achieve currently and also our future goals, and then link them to my presentation here. First, I want to start out by saying that we are a department that is tasked to actually increase our workload each year by providing more of what the community wants and needs. Because of these times that we live in, we at the rec department, we have become more of a business than ever before. We take pride in ourselves in offering the quality programs and services that people want and also that are affordable. Our programs have become increasingly self-supporting in the past several years and will continue to do so as we move forward. Without our hard-working staff, we would not be able to achieve our goals that we strive for. Our current goals are to train all volunteer coaches so that they can better prepared to provide the best experience for our youth, to offer more non-athletic type of programming for youth, to provide safe equipment to all of our participants, providing the best customer service to all who walk through the doors at the MTM Center. Keep in mind that our budget is almost 50% paid for by fees, up from only 20% in 1993. We collect an average of $13,000 in donations and grants each year, and most impressively, we receive thousands of volunteer hours from our members of the community to either coach, officiate, chaperone, and lead our programs and events. I'll go through the presentation, and I turn lights off, so if you can't see your budget, I'll answer some questions afterwards. Okay, Sherry, go ahead. Our department is broken up into pretty much three areas. The appropriated areas, the 5100s to the 5300s. These are the 100s, the 200s, and 300 lines that we've always had in the past. I'm really a big fan of the new Trio software. It's been very beneficial to us to track our expenditures and our revenues. If you look halfway down our budget, there's the 5600 lines. Those are expense lines. Those lines and the appropriated lines I want to be talking about quite a bit tonight. I want to I want to demonstrate how we're going to be able to move some lines into the appropriated lines. It's going to look like our budget has increased, but overall, with the revenue side coming up, it's going to actually not be as drastic as the budget report shows. I think the budget report shows that our overall budget went up 17%. The expense lines are pretty much our new programs, the donations and grants, things that we actually bring money in and expend out of it. A lot of departments call them enterprise accounts. And last is the revenues, and that's pretty much the rentals, the membership fees and programs and registration fees that we do not spend but go into the general fund. Okay. I start at the 5110 line, the wage line, but before that is a 5100 line, which my line is a 1.75% increase for myself, and for also the secretary's wages and also the assistant director. I'm going to have to move out of here so I can actually see this. If that's okay. I'm sorry if I'm... Can I get this here? Then I won't be able to see. It's too tall. Okay. The after-school program account is the biggest expense change because 2009, our past finance director requested that we start budgeting some of these newer programs. So basically, we took money from the 5676 line, the after-school program, which is an expense line, and moved it into the appropriated wages, all right, which is this line right here, 5110. The position itself partly is actually the position has already been in operation for several years now, but now we're just budgeting for it. It's always been paid for by the fees that we've collected. But to break it down, it's a $10.50 per hour position, 30 hours per week at 52 weeks a year with a total of $16,400. To break it down even further, $9,000 of that, $16,400, is coming out of the expense line, 5676, which is on your second page. The other two amounts, the $4,400 from the before-school recreation program is an appropriated line, but it's out of temporary wages. I'll be moving that into the wage line, out of temporary wages. Also, the $3,000 from our summer program camp, which is a total of $16,400. Okay. Okay, Sherry, you can change this time. I want to do a profit loss slide here, just to explain how both of the programs that this position is responsible for not only pays for itself, but actually brings in more money. The before-school program that we started 5 years ago, Lori Nodden is actually the employee. She started the program with us. We currently bring in about $10,200 in revenues each year. The expense for that program is $4,400. So you can see the profit that we make in that before-school program. If you don't know what it is, it's a program we started. It starts from 7 o'clock in the morning to 8:30 at the Lisbon Community School. Parents who need to get to work early drop their children off, and I think we have about 25 children in this program right now. Drop them off at 7 o'clock. We start off by either helping with their homework or playing games in the cafetorium, and then the last half an hour, 45 minutes, is in the gymnasium where we get them all ready for school, playing basketball, whatever. But it's been a beneficial program for many families over the years. The other one is the new after-school program we started 2 years ago. We had visited other communities and found out there was a real great need for this. A lot of parents work till 5:30 in the afternoons. And we learned that after looking at some other communities, that it's not just a fad, it's a real trend, that people need later care or recreation for their kids, supervision. A lot of parents don't want their kids to go home after school at 2:30 until 5:30. We have about 35 families taking advantage of our after-school program, about 17 currently that go 5 days a week, others 1 or 2 days a week. Break it down, our after-school program, the expense is $9,000 for our staff, our coordinator, $4,500 we spend for the part-timers that assist. So a total of expense $13,500. The revenues we bring in, we're anticipating about $14,500, so still a profit. These two programs are what I explained for in the slide before. I asterisked the before-school expense up top at $4,400 because the reason why it's not closer to breaking even is because I have our assistant director who works at that school cover the other staff position. It just makes sense. Okay, you can continue.
Are those costs in that number?
Can you go back? Sure.
9,045? Does that include the assistant director's cost as well?
The one up top, the 4,400, no. It would be about the same. It'd be about $4,400, so it'd be about $8,800 if I calculate her cost into that. Same amount of hours. Okay, next slide. Okay, now, this is closely related to the 5110 line because a lot of the monies that were in this line is going over to the other line. They're both, remember, they're both appropriated monies. Okay, so start out by temporary part-timers are all getting 1.7% increase in rate. I moved the $4,400 of before school temp wages that you saw in the slide before. I moved that to the temp wage, to the wage line, okay? In a sense, I'm identifying a position. It's not a new position, but I am identifying it into our budget this year. The third bullet statement, I'm adding $4,500 from the account 5676, the after-school program, part-time staff, okay? That's the second half of that $9,000. It's actually going, basically into that account. So it all evens out. In addition to that, our summer track program, which has been around since the beginning of time, has been losing numbers the past few years, so I decided to take it out of the budget. Our track coordinator has been diligent. She works in the Lisbon Community School. She does a lot of recruiting, and she's built that program back up. So now I can budget it at the end. In the past, I had it into an expense line. Now this $2,000 is actually going to be going back into the appropriated line. So it's just $2,000 revenues is going to actually be budgeted this year. Okay, you can change the next slide. Okay, now these are our real expense increases in our budget right here. With the exception of our 1.75 increase in salaries, these are the increases that are not covered by revenues. And let me explain. The professional development line, our goal is to train all of our volunteer coaches. Some of our leagues that we attend, especially our football league, mandates that any coaches and assistant coaches will be trained through National Youth Sports Coaching or through ASEP coaching. We make it mandatory in Lisbon now. It's better for them, it's better for us, it's better for the league. And with that associated cost, I don't expect a volunteer coach to pay for their training if we make it mandatory. So I'd like to increase our professional development line for that reason. The officials line has increased $500, basically because the cost for the assigners are always going up, and also for the game officials. I try to minimize the number of officials for our games. Sometimes, for the younger football games, I have only 2 officials for the game. For the older group, I have to have 3. It's league rules. So I try to, minimize the cost for that, but sometimes it's hard to do. Postage line has increased because really basically is because Sherry, our secretary, has been very diligent at getting the invoices out to people who still owe us money. And I'll tell you that $200 that we're going up in postage more than covers in the fees that we get from sending out invoices. Our office supplies, additional, we have blown the doors off the usage at the MTM Center. And with that, our fitness program, we have over 500 people have come through our orientation program. We have, Sherry ran off the numbers for me this week, and we've had from 60 to 120 people, different people coming into the fitness center. They pay $10 per month for a membership fee, and every time they write us a $10 check or give us $10 cash, we have to give them a receipt. So our receipt books are flying out of our closets as fast as we can get them. So that's going to be an additional cost for office supplies. And lastly, our operational supplies is to basically buy better football equipment and field hockey equipment. We need to make sure that our equipment's safe and serviceable, and so that nobody gets hurt. And actually, can you hit the next slide? I did a contrast with the new revenues. I don't know if the council has seen a detailed list of the revenues this year, but I am expecting to bring in an additional $20,000. We will exceed the $60,000 that we're expected to bring in this year. Right now, it's too soon to say how much more than we're going to expect, but I would say probably around 62 to 63,000. With the last year's budget, 141,871, and this year's increases, it shows that I have a $25,065 increase over last year's, added $20,000 revenue, an actual increase of $5,065, or 3%. Okay. And I'm not going to talk about each one of these, but I might pull a few out over the next couple of pages to talk about them. On these programs have been going on for several years. Pretty consistent. Those are our staple programs. Some of the ones that we didn't think would catch on, like soccer, has been one of our biggest programs the last 12 to 13 years. We have a couple hundred kids every fall playing soccer every Saturday morning. Our before-school recreation program, I talked about that one a little bit. Our Moxie 5K road race has been very impressive. It grows every year. It's always a challenge to get the road race completed, awards out before the fire trucks come by, and they can't hear me over my loud horn giving out the awards, but it's always a great day. We've resurfaced our tennis courts not too long ago, and tennis at the high school is doing really well, and also the general public. And we have I have too many to list, but summer sport camps are listed on there. But we have all summer long. We have every sport you can think of. We have 2-week camps for kids to participate in. Next slide. These are the recently added programs. All of them are self-supporting, either that or making money on top of that. For example, our fitness center. That fitness center line is in the 5,600 lines. We have, I believe, about $5,900 in that account right now, and that's the $10 per month I was telling you about that people pay. Our seniors program is run by Lynn Strout, and she has been incredible in getting this program off the ground the last year and a half, 2 years. It's fully funded through the Sunshine Hill Fund, and they're planning another Boston trip. They do trips every month. They do meals every other Friday, and they play cribbage every Monday. It's just quite an event over there. They're now doing Tai Chi on Monday mornings. It's pretty incredible to watch. But it's healthy, and that's one of our goals, to make a better, healthier Lisbon. We have our after-school program has been a model program for other towns to look at now. This is our second year doing it, and thank goodness we have the MTM Center, because we're able to do it. The bus drops them off right at our doors, and we keep them busy until 5:30. Our karate program, we had totally transformed one of our rooms into a dojo, as padded floors and equipment in there for karate. We do karate 4 and 5 days a week. And the Mad Science program is a new program starting Tuesday, at the Lisbon Community School. Basically what it is these people from Scarborough come in. They do it all over the state, but they do science projects and things like that. And we thought, yeah, we'll try it. It's kind of expensive, we thought, maybe, but we'll give it a shot because it's outside our sports, we're trying to get outside the sports model all the time. So the program filled up within a week, and we have people waiting on the waiting list, and they want us to do another program. So I think this might be another trend where we might be seeing ourselves go in a direction. Okay, next slide. These are our facilities. Most of you already know all about this, but our Lisbon Falls tennis courts, the high school, and the general public, the Pinewoods Road Ball Fields Complex is used by our Lisbon Junior Athletic League, and also adult softball teams, football, and even Durham Elementary School uses our fields for their games, since they're building new fields and a new school over there. Our MTM Park is used by just about everybody in town. It's kind of been the focal point of our Lisbon Falls area. The community center itself has been a source of pride because of the events that are going on in there all the time. It's quite a building, actually. It's old, has character. I don't understand whoever designed it, why they designed it in such a manner, with all the corners and hidden spots, but it seemed to work. The Historical Society, Head Start, and LACO, they're all long-term residents there. But we have everybody from Roy's Driving School. The 3rd Maine Infantry has been over there this weekend, practicing whatever they do. We have a Lobster Club now, members that now over there having their meetings there. And the Census Bureau has been there for the last couple years. The Heating Assistance Program has been over there quite a bit this year too, now that we have our seniors program over there. We have a low elements rope course at the Sugg Middle School that we're responsible for, and also the ice rink over at the high school. Next slide. Here's our staff. I think everybody knows who we are, but I wanted to put it out there. Lori Nodden is our before school and after school coordinator. She also works in the summertime for us, and she also helps with our pre-K, our preschool program on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She does that plus the before and after school program, so she's quite busy. And Marcy Crossgill is the coordinator for the preschool coordinator position. And next slide. And that's my presentation.
This, from what I can see, is the only department that is run like a business that actually makes money and provides wonderful services, and I can't believe what you do. I mean, the after-school program takes care of latchkey kids and makes the town and the kids safer. The fitness programs, I should join.
You should. I mean, we one of the things we have focused on is really trying to get our employees more healthy. Anybody that works for the town of Lisbon can work out in the fitness center for free. They can get a key to the building and exercise as long as they have a partner. It's free for them. But for anybody else, it's $10 a month. I mean, it's better than, yeah. I mean, it's convenient too. You don't want to if anywhere else. I think you have to go to Topsom or Lewiston, nearest place. So it's convenient.
Maybe it's not budget, but it is. Run like a business.
Any other questions on that?
Excellent job, Mark.
Thank you. I didn't go over everything, but I just went over the items on the budget that I increased. So if you want me to go through each one, might do that.
So, based on your presentation, your 5110 line, the large increases because you're budgeting for all those programs you didn't miss the budget for before.
2 of them.
So your after-school or before-school program.
My after-school program and track.
Correct.
Yep.
So that's driving from 17,000 to 16,000. That was the before-school program or after-school program.
Yeah, it was the after-school program. It was $14,500.
And the addition in the temporary wages was the way to...
That is, it was basically, I took the money out of the after-school program for the part-timers, and instead of putting in wages, I put in temporary wages. It was $4,500. And that was also where the track money went to. It was $2,000 for track.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. That's all we have for tonight, right? Yep, that's it. Okay.
Thursday, we're going to the discussions on what you...
Right, Thursday we should come with, what we want to start talking about, where we want to go with the budget, and things like that. I would ask Steve, I've got like 10 or 11 things written down here to try and get the interest to. One was, we had a question on public works, line 5420.
Yeah.
Come up with that answer. We're going to do a breakout of the salary percent increases, because they're not all related to just straight 1.75, so you're gonna explain that. I think part of that will come with the breakout of the longevity. So you're gonna provide that as well. Can you provide us what the 53rd week?
Yeah.
Of employees represents by budget? And then, there was a question for what are the step increases within the budget?
For the union employees.
Right. And then, we're gonna do telephone landline split. And then, a breakout of the service costs, maintenance costs for the cruiser that we got last year. And we're also gonna get the hard numbers on the cent stats from the police chief passed out.
Yes.
And this one,
Yeah, I asked a couple meetings ago, if you take each one of your proposed budgets, if you did the four proposed proposals, if we left the budget the way each one of those proposals was, what that impact would be on the budget.
Some of that would have to be modified, just the changes are made to it.
Yeah, I will bring my laptop and plug numbers in and play that game and see if they fall.
That's gonna happen again next year, so we know where we're working. Yeah.
Working backwards into the budget.
Right.
Yeah. As much as we can get.
Because that was a lot more helpful last year once we got into that. You know, being able to know what we were looking at, and where we were gonna go.
anything else that anybody has that I forgot? Anything from the advisory board?
Steve, could you just, when exactly does 2010 budget year end?
June 30th.
June 30th, it's always July 1 to June 30th.